Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I know some of you had late and fun nights. How many of you were at the bonfire? Awesome. I want to take a minute to thank everybody that was involved with making the local flavors and the dinner a big success last night. Some of them are in here, people from the host committee and from the University of Minnesota. Let's give them a hand for their hospitality. Another part of what the host committee put together was some of the activities that you saw throughout the student center here. So there's a art places map in Oyate. They did the Power to the Prairie postcards. And then in your packets, you also saw an invitation to write a letter to a stranger. And with that in mind, I want to welcome Athena Kildegard, who is a professor here at the University of Minnesota and a poet and a writer. And she's been involved with the summit ever since we started here in 2013. And she had this idea to do the Letter to a Stranger project, and she wanted to take a moment before we do our plenary about arts advocacy to share some of the results from that project. So let's welcome Athena Kildegard.
Thank you, Michelle. Hasn't this been amazing? So the idea behind the Letters to a Stranger project, you received an email about it, was to take the time to write to that person across the divide, and let them know who you are and why you value the arts. So what I did was I took those responses that I received and played with them, and this is the result. Dear stranger, dear yin to my yang, dear friend, I stare at you with curiosity and fear. You stare at me with curiosity and fear. You make me feel awkward and uneasy. I make you feel awkward and uneasy. I'm a human being full of passion and doubt. I'm a small town enthusiast. I'm low-key, not flamboyant, and I don't need accolades to know that I can make a difference. You think you don't know me, but I'm really you. I'm your neighbor, and I love art. When Winston Churchill was told they should get rid of arts funding during the war, he said, "Then what are we fighting for?" Art feeds us, sometimes without us even knowing it. Art teaches us to think in new ways. Art gives us a reprieve when daily life gets overwhelming. Art makes community. Art breaks the ice. What are we fighting for? Art starts conversations. Art makes school bearable for some students. Art crosses divides. Art reveals our differences. Art reassures us about what we have in common. Through art, we appreciate the talents of others. Art allows us to challenge the status quo. Art connects us to ourselves, to other people, to the world. Through art, we can talk about stuff nobody wants to talk about. What are we fighting for? The child tagging culverts could be an artist. The child leading her friends through high grass could be an artist. The child twirling in a sprinkler could be an artist. Without art, remorse. Without art, bumbling. With art, the joy of creation. With art, community. With art, stranger, yin to my yang, friend. With art, we can negotiate, transcend, escape, and celebrate this world together. Let's start. Thank you to everybody who sent in letters. And if you're now inspired to write your own, you can respond to that email, or you can write on the blank sheet of paper that's in your packet, and there's a blue mailbox out here, and you can drop your letter in there. I don't know what we're going to do with these, but I'm hoping something. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Athena. All right, before we get started with our panel today, I want to welcome Maxine Adams from the Forum of Regional Arts Councils of Minnesota. She is currently the chair of that organization. So let's welcome Maxine Adams.
Now, I'm a very short person, so hopefully I'm a talking head for some of you, but not all. Welcome to the Rural Arts and Cultural Summit on behalf of the Forum of Regional Arts Councils. That organization is the representation of all 11 arts councils in the state of Minnesota, and it has been our distinct pleasure this year to offer scholarships for people to attend the sessions here today. So thank you to the Rural Arts and Cultural Summit and my fellow forum members. I am going home inspired by a couple of things. One, just the camaraderie, particularly apparent last night at the meal. Lovely weather, wonderful food, and good company. You could hardly ask for a better trifecta for a good afternoon and evening in rural Minnesota. I'm also inspired by our conversations. The talks yesterday morning about leaning in and stepping up. How do you become more involved and take some kind of power in the arts system, and how Minnesota and actually our nation looks at the arts? I would like to suggest a couple of opportunities that present themselves to do exactly that. If you are interested in becoming more involved, contact one of your regional arts councils or the State Arts Board and offer to be a volunteer to serve on any of their grant panel selection opportunities, or as an arts board or regional arts council board member. We are always looking for good volunteers, and you get to make some choices about how the funding gets spent. And I'm going to put in a shameless plug for the Lake Region Arts Council, which is the 9 counties that you're in right now, and I'm the executive director there. We're looking for board members in Becker County, Douglas County, and Wilkin County. So if you are a resident in those counties and would like to serve as a board member, get a hold of me or the office. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we're talking about advocacy this morning, and if you are not already a member of Minnesota Citizens for the Arts, please do so. It's due in large part to their efforts and the grassroots efforts of our advocates across the state that we are, I think, Sheila, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we are the highest funded per capita state in the nation for arts. Yeah. Thank you, voters of Minnesota and the Legacy Fund. Thank you. So there are always opportunities. If you look around and open yourselves to them, hopefully you will take advantage of them. It's my distinct pleasure to also be the person introducing Sue Jens, Executive Director of the State Arts Board this morning. Sue Jens, you may not know, is a farm girl. She grew up on a farm just about, she tells me, 90 miles southeast of here in Renville County. I think one of the reasons that we're good friends is we're both farm girls and know what that life is like. So Sue has the interesting background of having deep roots in rural Minnesota and being equally at ease in St. Paul, Washington, D.C., and is a good representative of the State Arts Board in many venues across the nation. So please join me in a warm welcome for Sue Jens.
Good morning, everyone. Thank Thank you. That was very nice. I'm so thrilled to be here. I've had the great opportunity to be at all of the summits, back to the first one in 2011, and I'm thrilled to see that this conversation is not only continuing but expanding. I think Laura said 22 states represented this year. I'm so proud to see Minnesota playing a leading role in this conversation. So thank you to Springboard for the Arts. Thank you to those of you who are on the planning committee, the artists, the speakers who are making the content so really rich and important. I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I'm looking forward to today. Maxine talked a little bit about the Legacy Amendment, talked about the Arts Board and the Regional Arts Council system. After the Legacy Amendment was passed, we created for ourselves a set of key outcomes, what we hope will be possible in Minnesota because of this significant investment of public funds. And the first statement is that the arts are essential in a vibrant society. And essential is an interesting word and an intentional word. And vibrant society, the idea that every person in every community can be the best that it or he or she wants to be. So how do we do that? How do we make the arts essential? So many people think of the arts and they think about a picture on the wall, or they think about a song or a painting, and that's where it starts. But we all know that it goes much deeper than that, and it's our job, all of us, to really push. I think yesterday I'm told the phrase was lean in. So to lean in, as we give opportunities to young people, arts opportunities, and they develop skills that make them successful in school and in life, we are making the arts essential. As we provide opportunities for older adults who sometimes can be isolated, bring them into community, give them opportunities, arts opportunities that will celebrate a life of experience and wisdom, we're making the arts essential. Many of you are working with your local governments on repurposing a building or rethinking what the physical space of a community looks like. So you're creating a new chapter for that community. You're making the creative process essential. And I think one of the most important things we all need to be doing is understanding the power of the arts in building bridges, especially cultural bridges. And Athena, you said it beautifully, the idea about reaching out to people who we think are different, but really aren't different from us when we go beneath the surface. So how do we honor the traditions of the peoples who have been here for thousands of years? How do we honor and share the traditions for those of us whose families have been farmers in Minnesota since the 1800s? How do we honor the traditions of the people who moved to Minnesota yesterday? And to use the songs and the stories and the music as that starting place for those conversations. So I want a copy of what you said, Athena. That was fabulous. At the heart of the arts are the concept of connection, which Athena talked about, and imagining possibilities. And we have that great gift, and it's our job to give that great gift to everybody that we meet through our work, and through that we will make the arts essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine and Sue. All right, we're operating a little bit on RAC Summit time, so that means we're about 15 minutes off schedule, which is, I think, just fine. We'll just flow through the morning. So without further ado, we have an amazing group of people up here. They're gonna do their thing for about 45 minutes, and then we will flow into Jessica Metcalf's keynote address. So I just want to briefly welcome Ashley Hansen, who is our moderator today, and she helped us think about this conversation and who should be at the table. So Ashley is a theater maker, organizer, and you saw her bus, Public Transformation. There we go. So let's give Ashley a welcome, and she will introduce the rest of our guests today.
Thank you. I love art, and I love community, and I love convenings like this where art and community get to combine. As we go into this morning's session at the start of day 2, where you might be feeling, many things, inspired and also maybe a little tired, but there's all of the thoughts, and we kind of are living up here when we're at these amazing gatherings. So I wanted to just take a moment before we dive into talking about rural arts advocacy to reground us in our respective communities. And if you are somebody like me who works in multiple communities, reground you in one of those communities, that you can really think about that place as we're having this conversation and those specific challenges or those specific ideas that you're bringing to the table in that community. So if you would just join me for a moment to just close your eyes and imagine yourself in that community, and imagine yourself moving about and interacting with that community. Let's just take a big deep breath in and a big deep breath out. Feeling your feet grounded in that community. And open our eyes to come back into this room. And remember why we're all here and why we are all doing this amazing work that we have the privilege and honor to do. So as Michelle mentioned, I'm primarily a theater artist, but I also have a little yellow school bus that I took across the country earlier this year to interview artists working in communities with a population of 10,000 or less. And the reason for that journey was because I came to a place in my practice where I felt like I needed to learn more about how to do this work better and deeper and really start to bridge those divides that we face in our communities in a much stronger and more meaningful way. So I wanted to go deeper, and I learned best by talking to people, which is why I'm so excited to be moderating this panel and having this conversation today, to talk and to learn about how we can all do our work better. So I visited 24 different communities across the country. I had 3 different artists with me along the way as a mobile artist residency. And we were really looking at that intersection of art and community development and how the artists in these communities are navigating the space between preserving the tradition of their communities and working towards progressing our communities into whatever the future of rural America looks like. And in that conversation, especially in our current political climate, was a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of courage, and amazing bravery, and recognizing that this can be very isolating work, and we are often the only people in the room advocating for a certain issue or the arts, as was mentioned here. So it is tiring work, and we are here together to remember that we are not alone. Part of the journey going across the country, coming to the artist rather than inviting the artist to come to a given thing, like come to this event, come to this workshop, come to this conference. I'm going to come to you, see you in action in your community, and learn how you are advocating for the arts in your region. For some of you that came to the session yesterday and got to dig in a little bit deeper to that. So as moderator today, my role is really going to be to look at this from the practitioner standpoint, pulling out some of the questions and themes and ideas that we had the privilege and honor of witnessing and experiencing and exploring on the road. So with that, I'm going to let these amazing esteemed panelists introduce themselves. But as you do, I would love for you to first address, we have these 3 really, really big words: rural, arts, advocacy. And each of them can be unpacked in a myriad of different ways and mean very different things depending on where you are. So as you each introduce yourselves, could you each define what rural arts advocacy means to you, why it is important to you, and why it is important in this present moment? Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Sheila. I forgot to do this. Sorry. Hello. My name is Sheila Smith. I'm Executive Director of Minnesota Citizens for the Arts and Chair of the Creative Minnesota Project. And I've been doing this work for 22 years. I was just realizing this morning. To me, rural arts advocacy is about educating people who may not know what you know about the importance of the arts, about the reality of a rural experience, to me, that's what advocacy is. You know, when you think of the word advocacy, you might picture in your mind people marching down the street yelling and holding signs, or people arguing, but that's not what advocacy is to me at all. To me, it's sitting down with somebody and talking about what I know to be true, which is that the arts are one of Minnesota's signature quality of life aspects, that the arts are more important to Minnesotans than they are to people in surrounding states, which we actually have public opinion polling to show, that has a huge impact on our economy and quality of life. And all I have to do is just tell the truth, the story of what the arts mean to our state. And we're constantly bringing people over that artificial divide of party politics or urban-rural or whatever divide that people are trying to divide us up by. It's about educating.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Murphy, and I am a state legislator from St. Paul. I'm also a nurse and a teacher and a candidate for governor. And this is my second visit. Thank you. This is my second visit to the Rural Arts and Culture Summit, and I'm delighted to be here. Absolutely delighted, and feel a real sense of urgency about the work that you are doing. 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I had what was a really important conversation with Kelly Ash, and I had gotten to know him prior to that, but we'd had a hard election in 2014, and it was the place where I first noted the coarseness of something that's existed in Minnesota for a long time, the thing that people are talking about, this urban and rural divide. And in the world in which I am operating and working, it is something that is alienating us from one another. And Minnesotans are the ones that are paying the price for that alienation when we don't see each other for who we are. And it was Kelly who said to me, baloney, to the notion that rural Minnesota is not thriving. He rejected it out of hand. And it was an opening for me to go back to my own roots, coming from a small community, but also to explore and learn more about Minnesota through the lens of people who are living in rural communities. And let's be clear, they are not a monolith. That is for sure. Not one part of Minnesota is a monolith, and that is true for our rural communities as well. But I was fortunate to participate in a group that came together around rural art and placemaking. And I have seen art, as we know, all over the state of Minnesota, creating that sense of place, about community development, about economic development, but giving each of our communities a sense of identity. And when I think about the coarse conversation I am hearing in the state's capital about what makes us different and divided from one another, I see something completely different. And it is through the work that people in communities looking at, creating, and talking about what makes us alike through the lens of art that I feel great hope for our future, but also a real sense of urgency for the story that's being told all across the state of Minnesota. Last night, I was not at the bonfire because instead I was at an iftar. I was at a place breaking fast for Ramadan in a Jewish synagogue where Jews and Muslims and Christians came together to talk about what our real shared experience and commonalities and brotherhood is about. And I think that same conversation is happening all across the state of Minnesota. We're just not hearing enough of it in the state capitol. So I am with you. I am with us and the work that we're doing to make sure each of our communities are thriving. And I know the power of art to tell that story. And that's why I'm so excited to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Serena Taby. I live and work out of Granite Falls, Minnesota, population a little under 3,000. And my day job is the Minnesota Main Street coordinator for many downtown Main Street programs in Minnesota, and I work for the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota out of St. Paul. But in my role here today, I'm thinking more about my role as a city council member. And I've been a city council member, it's my 5th year. I did decide to run again. So it's work I unexpectedly actually really enjoy and love to do. I mean, it's just, it it's one of those things that, you know, like people say, I never in a million years imagined myself running for local office. And so in my role as a local council member, advocacy to me means really supporting the folks and the people in community, even people that come from outside of the community, that really want that space. And for me, the rural arts really is able to create that space for creative and innovative thinking that I think a lot of small rural communities really need right now. And so it's just even having that small event where there's music out on, you know, you're next to that, my mom, she's the chamber director in our community, Mary Gillespie, and she does a lot of arts advocacy. And so together we do a lot of different types of just supporting the arts in our community. And I think just having that person, especially like a local council member, that is able to say yes to things versus no, or that's scary, I don't think that's gonna work, which, you know, you hear that a lot. And so even just my presence, I think, on the local government and on the local city council has shifted the conversation. It has shifted the way our community thinks about rural arts and culture in Granite Falls.
Good morning. I'm Hugh Weber. Today I sit before you as a recovered political operative and community organizer, and for the last decade as someone who's sought only to connect and celebrate creativity in all forms, including the arts, in rural communities, particularly in the states that end in OTA, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota, which has been our field of practice in the nonprofits name that I've worked under. This is an unusual time, and maybe I frame it in the time as much as the definitions, because I struggle with rural as a word to use to represent the places that I'm from. I think for generations, I served in the Undersecretary's Office for Rural Development at USDA in DC for a while. And the idea that rural and remote were always connected, that this was rural and remote, which implies to me distance, a lack of proximity, a lack of population, a lack of possibility. So I'm not gonna dwell on definitions, or we'll spiral out of control here of what we should call these spaces, these kind of big sky, small town, wonderful places that I grew up in, rural South Dakota. Instead, I think thinking about the time is important from a contextual aspect. I grew up in a very conservative rural context. I ultimately ran very conservative political campaigns, but went to a very progressive undergraduate institution called Swarthmore College outside of Philadelphia. And the day after the election, received around 100 emails from classmates. Their context was one of, I think, seeking to find empathy, but also seeking connection. So the messages more or less all said the same thing. We know you love us. You know, we have stood up for you at your wedding. We've been the godparents of your children. We know you love us. And we know you've chosen to move back to the rural Midwest. And so you must love them. Help us understand. Right? Like, help us begin to build context for humanity, their humanity, our humanity. This is sincere. I don't have much of a filter, so embrace the next hour. And it was very clear very quickly that the role of the arts in small towns, in sparsely populated areas, in places that I think have room for possibility, has a dual role at this point. I think for so many generations, the role of culture bearer was enough, right? The role of the people that created and connected, were empathetic and deeply integrated was enough. And I think that we've transitioned over the last several years, really over the last decade, but certainly over the last 6 months, into the role being as much cultural translator as it is culture bearer. So my entire focus in my work is in this space of narrative and network. It's why I can't embrace the idea of rural, because it implies remote, which is no longer necessary. I'm not someone that believes that digital hugs work, so this isn't a social media or web conversation. I just think we are more connected than we've ever been, and yet social isolation is the epidemic that feeds most societal ills, right? There's research now that shows on everything from Alzheimer's to your life expectancy to the propensity to stroke or obesity, your job opportunities are likely to be funded by arts organizations or venture capital firms are all dictated by social isolation or the inverse. And so connection on that level is the critical element, and where I spend most of my time is thinking about how those faces, which I'm sure are out there somewhere beyond the lights, connect to each other, to pools of resources, to the broader community. And if proximity is the definition of rural, then there are rural places in the south side of Chicago. There are very rural places. I was just in Dallas this last week having this conversation. Rural, it becomes as much a function of the way you connect, and that may not be popular, but I happen to believe it. We need not be defined by distance from urban centers in the way we think about our creativity and our arts.
Thank you, Hugh. So I want to jump on what you said about, again, not going into definitions, but this idea of rural. And as I took this journey across the country, that was the thing that stuck out to me the most, that we refer to rural America as though it is a place, one thing, which of course it's many, many, many things. But even looking at the rural Midwest or looking at rural Minnesota, I mean, if I just say the words, the Iron Range, the Northwoods, the Prairie, southeastern Minnesota, like all of these different images come to mind. And while there may be a lot of shared values and challenges and issues, there are, of course, very vast differences. So as advocates for our rural communities, these differences can make it challenging for us to have a unified voice or a message to best position ourselves to act in the best interest of our rural places. So first, for Sheila and Aaron, as arts advocates working on national and state level, where policy level policy, where the politics can be so polarizing, what are the different ways you have had to essentially pitch the arts to different decision makers? And have you found that the differing needs of these different rural communities or the different constituents you're representing or the different artists that you're representing have made it challenging for you to have a unified voice around the certain issue related to arts or rural advocacy?
I think the fundamental thing that we work with is that we are stronger together than we are apart. And that principle came into play really strongly in 2008 when we did the Legacy Amendment, where we figured out how to work with environmental advocates, with the NRA, and hunting and fishing advocates, and water advocates, and parks and trails advocates together to pass the Legacy Amendment. And it freaked out the press a lot that we had all figured out how to talk to each other, and their articles almost never reflected what was actually happening, which was we were in conversations about, well, what do we have in common? And we figured out that we had several things in common. One was that we were all fierce Minnesota partisans, right? We think Minnesota is the best place to live in the whole country. Don't tell me anything else. We will always say Minnesota's the best. Rah! We all totally agreed on that, right? And then the other thing was, as we talked about the issues that we cared about, whether it was the heritage of hunting, preserving the land and water, being able to live with and provide the greatest cultural opportunities in the country. It was about all of them had the same desire, which was to pass on the best of these things to the next generation, to preserve and protect them, and to make sure that the next generation had opportunities to be outdoors in a pristine environment, to experience the arts as kids, and to grow up with the background of really having a lot of opportunities in the arts. We had those things in common, and once we figured that out, we were good to go. It took a while to figure that out, and some people never did actually join the team. But it allowed us to work together to pass a statewide referendum to create dedicated funding for those things that we were fighting for. And now we are all benefiting from the legacy dollars, whether we're an environmental advocate, so hunting and angling advocate, or an art supporter. So it always goes back to that. What do we have in common?
Thank you.
Having served on the Legacy Committee that then distributes those funds, I experienced a lot of support for all the provisions, all of the ways in which we expend that money. Although sometimes I felt like art and the art sections of that committee, I got a little less attention. There's a lot of interest in land and water, and that gets talked about a lot in the committee. And I also sometimes hear my colleagues refer to art sometimes in a diminutive way. Artsy fartsy is a phrase I've heard sometimes at the legislature. But for Minnesotans, art, I think, is on par with education in terms of its relevance and its importance to the way we lead our lives and the story we tell about ourselves. I met a woman doing some work on art and rural placemaking. Her name is Amy Demmer. I don't know if she's here today, but she's from the Art Colony in Grand Marais. And we were at a meeting together, and she had this really bright idea about creating an art app. And she said, it would be a way that as people are traveling across the state of Minnesota, if they could look at their app and figure out where they are in the state and what's available in terms of art, what they could see, what they could purchase, it would lift up what's happening in communities all across the state of Minnesota, which I thought was a great idea. And so we put that together as a piece of legislation, and it is the easiest piece of legislation I have ever passed. Bob Gunther, who's the author, the chair of that committee, couldn't wait to hear it. We had a very, very simple hearing, and I think the idea that this would connect us through something that was easily accessible for people. So from a commerce perspective, but also from a cultural and connectivity perspective, that thing sailed through and we got it funded, and it will, become something available within the next year or so. So I think that is just one simple proof point. About a good idea that a Minnesotan had that we took through that process, and it was easily seen for the power that it presents for us.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks to Amy. I know she is here. Yeah, yay, Amy. So to piggyback on that, I want to ask Hugh and Serena, in your work on the local and regional level, what do arts advocacy and rural advocacy have in common? And what could advocates on each side learn from each other? Or how have you seen these two worlds intersect and support the other? Or how have you seen them not working so well together?
All right, I'll tackle that one first. So on the very local level in my community, I got on the city council at the end of 2012, and since being on there, we've started funding. Granted, it's very small amounts, less than $5,000, but we do help fund our local Granite Area Arts Council. That's a regional arts council. They have a gallery in our community, and we do fund other events. For example, we have a Meander art crawl in our region in October. We have an event in Granite Falls. So the city does step in those times to partner with our local nonprofits that are doing arts and cultural work. And the advocates on those, those board of directors, I think are our largest assets. I love them all. They do so much work that the city, we don't have the resources or the staff to implement a lot of these great events and bringing arts and culture into our community. And I think they hadn't funded before 2012. So this is a new thing, and I think even having, I think a really important point that I don't see in a lot of communities, and when I work in other communities also, is that to normalize arts and culture is to, for example, city council members, I think is actually to show up to the city council meetings and talk about that event. Because a lot of times those city council members aren't at your events. They don't experience it, and they won't ever experience it, most likely. Because it's rare that I see some of my colleagues at those events. And so I think it's really important for local advocates to show up at our council meetings, I can probably hold up on my hand how many times I've seen people at our meetings. It's very rare. So when it does happen, you take note of it. I do. I take note of it, and I remember very well when somebody from an organization or a local nonprofit shows up at the city council member, and even not even having to ask for money or ask for anything, they just want to talk to you about, this is what happened at this event, and it was a success, and this is the impact it had in our community. Because I don't think they don't know that. They aren't aware of it. They aren't thinking of it. So you need to make sure you're in front of them on a very regular basis to make sure that they are aware of it, and so that the next time you do come up for asking for something, it's a lot easier, and that they are already familiar with what you're doing. So I think those intersections of advocating for your rural, telling them, okay, the stuff we're doing is impacting recruitment, I mean, I wouldn't live in Granite Falls without the rural arts and cultural aspect, hands down. I mean, that's all of my friends, everybody that I've met has been through arts and culture in some way or form. And so recruiting employees and recruiting an economic development component is so important with the Rural Arts and Cultural Summit, and it's a way to speak kind of more of their language, but also just, again, make sure you're in front of them at least once a year. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot, and it also helps you get used to getting in front of city council, because I remember the first time I was, and oh my God, I think I was more nervous than I am right now sitting here. So it's a very intimidating process, but I think the more you do it, the better you'll feel about it. And it's really, really important. I can't stress that enough.
Right, and you're not scary at all as a city council member, so I'm sure that, you're not, yeah.
I don't know.
Super intimidating. I'd say the place where I think maybe an anecdote before I jump into it. So a dear friend, and I know that yesterday there was a conversation around inclusion and diversity, and a dear friend, if you're interested in that space, the D&I space, I think that Fortune Magazine does a daily column called Race Ahead. It is the best email I receive every day in this space of thinking about diverse voices in a multicultural society and business environment. Dear friend Ellen McGirt writes this. She came through one of our OTA events, and I got to know her. And I was talking recently about how I feel every time I open my mouth about creativity, the arts, culture, that I'm burning bridges, and that there is this sense that these are not the times for extraneous things. And she took a deep breath and just said, Hugh, at some point we're going to need to realize that some of those bridges have never been there, right? This was incredibly freeing for me, right? As someone that's both a people pleaser and a community builder, the assumption of bridges means offending and burning those bridges is an outcome of speaking your mind and truth and heart. And I think recognizing that in some cases they didn't exist is critically important, because it allows us then to consider whether they should, and to begin the work of building those bridges, which is it can be extremely challenging. So I think the point of intersection that is often overlooked, both in some areas of government, community and economic development, but also within the arts community, is that there is a shared desire to improve community. Like there's an absolute, sincere and shared desire on all parties to build quality of life and to provide opportunity and to retain youth and to thrive. This is not there are very few elected leaders, there are very few community and business leaders that just want to maintain or even regress the community. And that's hard in the political context, it's hard in some of the divisive conversations, but I think that's a truth. So I think the intersection of rural advocacy or community advocacy and arts advocacy is a shared desire to thrive as human beings and together. I think where they find their division, or where they find their differences in use of language, which I think is challenging. I had this assumption, like any good Midwesterner that goes to the East Coast or West Coast for 15 minutes and comes back with a head full of ideas. I came back in 2006 and looked at this region that I'd grown up, kind of Millbank sits right near the center of these three states, with this expectation that we were more alike than we were different, or that we all shared the same general kind of worldview and culture and perspective. That if the states ended in OTA and we were from some similar regions, and our people either were here for thousands of years or came more recently, that we had a shared of understanding. The weather at the very basic kind of level made us more alike, right? And the reality is, each and every one of those communities that we worked in, we do hold the 7 counties of Minneapolis to St. Paul kind of out, but those 4.5 million people that live in the rest of these 3 states are incredibly diverse. And I would begin to tell a story about Millbank and Plankington, or visit Mankato and talk about Williston, and immediately eyes would gloss over, and every exception in the world would pop out. And so I think understanding that subtlety is important, and you spoke to this. But I think the thing they hold in common is in many of them, and it sounds like I should move to Minnesota, frankly, because I think the border seems to be a delightful barrier that it sounds like the appreciation level may be higher here, and I think that's probably fair. But there is a divide between the perspectives of rural advocacy or development and arts advocacy and development in its centrality to what functionally gets you to the destination of a better community. I think the integrated nature of if the circles are kind of concentric circles, I think potholes and streets are in that center. Jobs and businesses are in another circle, and then 3 or 4 circles later, you start to think about performance artists and painters, and I think that is a divide based on language, subtlety even within a community, but also a divide based on perspective of what is essential and what is extravagant. And some of that's the practicality of dealing with the perspective or perception of limited resources. But I think it's an important difference. I think when I sit in front of a group that is I was just spoke to a business group in Aberdeen, South Dakota. The red shoes land a little differently, right? I mean, they land and engage a little differently, and that's because it's seen as frivolous rather than functional, and they're just comfortable shoes, right? It's assumed to be something that it's not because of language and experience.
So how do we begin to have that conversation with the non-believers, with the red shoes? How do we, where
I love the idea of that as like a cultural group, like the persona, like how do we talk to the red shoes? I feel like that's a conversation that would happen in a caucus somewhere. Like we gotta dial in the red shoes.
Look what shoes you're wearing.
No. I know. And we're matching outfit today.
And let me build on that. And what is the role of the artist in that space? How do we create that space to talk to the other side?
I think it was actually mentioned yesterday that Minnesotans are intensely interested in having coffee.
Yeah.
And it's another identifier of the population. So one strategy that artists are using is to just invite the mayor out for coffee and talk about what's going on, which is probably a lower stress level than presenting in front of the city council for your first go around. And then just work your way through the whole city council. Work your way through the Economic Development Authority people. Work your way through the Chamber of Commerce. In fact, join the Chamber of Commerce, right? That's the center of the business community. You're on Main Street too. You're doing stuff, contributing to the community. And if you're on the Chamber of Commerce, it'll be way easier to get them to give you money because you are one of them instead of on the outside, for example. You can, and just by even having these meetings without the expectation that you're going to get anything out of it, but with the goal of educating, going back to educating folks about what's happening in town in terms of the arts, where you're seeing the impact, where things that you know are bubbling up in the community. You just want to give them a heads up that things are coming. Maybe as decision makers, they're going to want to know that there's conversations going on out there, that needs are rising, that they're going to hear about later. So that you're contributing to the knowledge base that's in their head as they're doing decision making, so that when you do come back later and say, hey, how about $5,000 for this local festival, you've already got the relationship established. It's going to be a lot easier to get something done. But I believe in the power of coffee.
And someone said it, my work is transitioning a little. I'm doing a lot with public radio around a brand now called the Potluck Society, which is radio segments, will be some TV soon, and a podcast of the same name. And it's really built around this idea of a potluck strategy, which potluck strategy, at least in Millbank where I came from, is my mother and uncles and aunts would observe being the first step of really looking at what the community looks like. And this is identifying whether it's city council or arts patrons or just young people that may have an inclination, observing what's there, because I think that leaves room for serendipity. It's invitation, which is an important part of a potluck, letting them know you're having it, but critical to a potluck is return contribution and reciprocity, right? So often we kind of educate outwardly, and there's no room for the inbound or the reciprocity or mutuality that relationship requires. It's conversation, so many times over coffee even, which I drink way too much of, but over coffee, we are just simply sitting at tables with others waiting to tell our story. We do very little listening. There's, and I think artists have a gift for empathy in many cases, but we do very little listening. So focusing on questions rather than answers. My friend Joe Bartman likes to say that answers are an ending, they're not an opening. And so focusing on questions rather than answers, and then celebration, which is something I think small towns often miss. Did a big survey a couple years ago in my hometown, and people couldn't remember in specific terms what assets the community had. They talked very generally about good schools or parks or all these high-level things. They had forgotten what the unique assets were to celebrate. And so we started throwing mini and micro parties all over town for reasons that would seem frivolous, like the 4 women that have gotten together as friends once a week to have coffee for nearly 40 years. Like, if something isn't worth celebrating in that, I don't know what is. So observation, invitation, conversation, celebration as a potluck strategy, which I think is the core of how we build our communities and how we build some of those bridges that maybe didn't exist. Everyone likes scotcheroo bars or a good hot dish, and we can come together over that.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to just shift gears a little bit to make sure to talk about, this past election, of course, has drawn a lot of attention to the urban-rural divide, or the urban-rural continuum, as the language was being talked about yesterday. So how has this attention in your work, in your respective work, how has this attention to the perceived and real urban-rural divide made our work as rural advocates, arts advocates, rural artists easier or more difficult? And kind of to follow up with that, there's so many narratives being told that are very damaging on both sides. What narratives need to be told in both rural and urban areas to undo that damage that has been done and that continues to be done? And how do we collect and communicate those narratives on either side of this divide? And again, how can the arts be a part of that conversation?
I feel like I'm in advanced science around the discussion about the divide, and I love hearing it framed as a continuum instead. I have a friend a good friend now, who used to represent a district in Wilmer, and we were talking about that feeling that comes underneath that from our two perspectives. And to me, when I hear from my colleagues that represent rural districts and talk about their concerns and wanting to represent their districts with strength, one of the underlying themes that always comes with that is you don't belong here. You're not from here. You don't fit in here. You're from the metro. You stay away. And I was talking to her about how that felt. I felt like an 8th grader again, trying to fit in someplace that I cared about, but they didn't want me because of my zip code. And she told me that what she sees from me and where I live is a concentration of power and wealth, that could easily vanquish the way of life in rural communities. And I was so happy for the frank conversation because it helped me understand a little bit more sort of that feeling underneath this, what feels to me like a pernicious narrative that I would love to crush because, again, I think it is damaging really for the whole of the future for this state and for communities. And we all choose a place to live, right? Each of the place we live is our home. And I would want everybody's home to be awesome, right? And if we have to pick one versus the other, someone's home isn't going to be the awesome place that it should be. And that's why I'm really, a sense, again, that sense of urgency that we have to claim and proclaim a different narrative about where we live, not only because of who we are, but because of our economic future. And this narrative will harm that economic future.
I think it's important for us to understand that we are now the strongest place in America in terms of public arts funding. And how did that happen? That happened in a coalition that included rural arts advocates and metro advocates working together. We would never be where we are now if we hadn't figured out our common ground and gone to the legislature with one voice. And we're always in constant danger of forgetting that lesson, that we got to where we are now, which is the best place we could possibly be in terms of public arts funding on the state level, because we work together. One of my favorite sayings is from Ben Franklin: "If we do not hang together, surely we will all hang separately." That I think arts advocacy issues are the same as any other statewide issue, whether we were in a breakout yesterday talking about the urban-rural divide, and I loved a quote from one of the speakers, which is, "The metro has the eaters and the rural areas have the farmers who feed them." So they have a lot in common. And figuring out how to work together on a statewide basis is really important. And we just need to push back and resist all these people who want to divide us. It's so easy to fall back into that sort of well-worn path of let's fight each other between rural and urban. You get past that and we can actually start accomplishing things. I'm so annoyed by it. It's such a waste of time and energy. Come on, we've got actual stuff to work on. Can you just shut up about that? You know, just stop it. So you're in the Capitol and everybody's dividing on that geographic basis when actually everybody should be coming together on the issue basis. It's so much more important, and we're just wasting so much time. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Did you had
Don't stop.
Yeah, so I actually, since the whole, this rural-urban divide I've been thinking about it, it's been talked about even before the election for the past, 5 years since I moved to Granite Falls. It's been on my mind. But when I recently took my current position working for a nonprofit located in St. Paul, it's really been on my mind a lot more often because I work for an organization, based in an urban center. I have to drive there once a month. And by the way, kudos to those organizations that allow for people to live where they want to live and can live out in rural spaces and rural places, and also be able to find jobs and not have to move, because that's what I would have had to do. So I'm really thankful for that. It's my dream job, best opportunity. But that has actually given me the opportunity to really, I have my coworkers live in that urban context, and we have conversations about it all of the time. It's on a daily basis. They came out the other few months ago to my office in Granite Falls, and we went and, I showed them around. I talked about all the issues because we deal with, historic preservation and downtown revitalization. And my real passion is that downtown, like how to keep our downtown districts alive in our really small communities and rural communities. And I know arts and culture is a huge part of it. But just even the simple task of talking to my coworkers and talking to the people I work for that are located in St. Paul about the differences and, you know, what it's like out here, the resources, the lack of resources is very different than, you know, the types of issues, and they know that. And so it's been a long, it's an ongoing conversation. And I mean, for me, a young person living out in, you know, small town in Granite Falls, is I need that urban, you know, I need the urban experience, and I also need the rural experience. Oh my God, the feeling I get when I leave the cities is amazing. The stress level goes down so many notches. I love coming out, and I love that drive. But I mean, we feed off each other, and the ideas and the inspiration I get from the urban and the rural, I mean, it's like it's an exchange. Mm-hmm. And the folks, I mean, I'm, you know, like even you, Ashley, I get to host you in my church in Granite Falls, and I love those experiences where I do get to meet and talk to other people about great ideas, and that idea exchange is so valuable. I can't emphasize it enough. So, yeah.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago, I sat down with a filmmaker in Sioux Falls, and he said something that fundamentally shifted my sense of the kind of narrative as a vehicle, and simply said, when everything we see, whether it's film or fashion or culture, happens somewhere else and happens in places that don't look like this, we think that life happens somewhere else. Which was an effective pitch because we gave him a lot of money to make films, right? We commissioned 35 micro documentaries with him, and these were films about economic development in Fargo, being a National Geographic photographer in rural Chamberlain, South Dakota, doing education reform out of Minneapolis. It was to begin to tell those stories in a real way about here and in a generative kind of future-focused way. I do a lot with chambers and community development professionals as part of translating, and within 15 minutes of talking to the guy at the cash register at a gas station or stopping in at the newspaper or going to the high school, you know the destination of that community. And I hate to be fatalistic, but most of our small towns aren't going to exist, and I think that's a good thing, because those that do exist will have made a conscious decision to exist. Will not be merely hoping that somehow tradition will propel them to the future, but will making a decision around the narrative they want to tell. And if you go to that cash register and all you hear are about schools closing or declining enrollments, if you hear about the new empty space on Main Street being a negative thing, if you hear these things, as opposed to, there are so many small towns that I have had the good fortune to visit that talk about, like, we got a brand new open space on Main Street. We're thinking it could be an artist studio, right? It's a very different narrative to tell than we lost the hardware store. People are driving to Walmart in Watertown, right? And so I think that my perspective both on what it is we're aspiring to be, but then the stories that we're telling is probably the best diagnostic, both in terms of arts, but just in general kind of small town vitality and health that we can look to. So I think just being conscious of that was an aha moment for me that shouldn't have been as a guy that tells stories for a living, but it was really true. When I was growing up, all of the stories I was telling myself were stories about Washington D.C. in a political context, and that was destination, which meant it couldn't exist in Millbank, and that's problematic.
So, in our final just question, and really, we can keep these answers really brief because I know we only have about 2 minutes left. But what can what can I do? I mean, apart from calling my legislator, what can I do? Which is really important, right? But like on a real, tangible basis, as somebody who is working in our small towns, or as individual artists living in our small towns, or somebody working and living in an urban area that really cares about the future of our small towns. So one little takeaway that we can each do to help push this forward, this conversation forward.
Can you guess what I would say? Yes, run for city council. That's my number one takeaway. And what I know there has to be folks out there that have thought about it, maybe. And I just want to tell you that it's really, really scary, like when you decide to do it and then when you take the leap. But it will get better. Yes, you will feel uncomfortable, but I hear that that's a normal feeling for some folks, and when you're advocating anyway, so you might as well feel uncomfortable and then actually have the power to make decisions, because a city council member, we have a lot of power in a local community. And so that's my number one. Just please run for city council. And if you want to talk about it or talk about how scary it is or how great it is as well, please come to me. I'll tell you about it.
Thank you.
I'd like to urge people to go to creativemn.org and download your regional economic impact study, make copies of it, and then go to your city council and present about the economic impact of the arts in your region. There's also 17 city and county level studies, and an opportunity now for you to sign up to get an economic impact study of your own community. We're having a breakout with Sharon Rodning Bash. I forget what the title of the breakout is, but look for Sharon Rodning Bash. We're recruiting new towns right now to do local economic impact studies. There's still space for 5 or 6 more communities. So if you come to this meeting and tell me you want in, we'll get you in.
Awesome.
Keep telling the story of your community. Talk to people, your neighbors, the people in your churches, the people that you know in your work about what's going right. And tell that story across the state of Minnesota. Guard the tools of our democracy, because they are under attack, and just like education and art are important, so is our democracy. And then last but not least, always vote.
And I just say be for something very specific. There's so much to pull your hair out, literally, over right now. I mean, there's so much to be negative, and there's so much room for conflict, but being for something and being intentional and specific about what that thing is, I think has extraordinary power.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you're doing for all of us, on behalf of all of us. And thank you to all of you for your incredible work and advocacy and your bravery and your strength, and you are not alone. There are other people all across this great country working on our behalf, and we can do this. We can keep doing this. Rah!
Thank you. And thank you to Ashley for moderating that great conversation. Let's give them one more round of applause. We are going to keep moving this morning, so what I would like to encourage you to do right now is, if you don't have a seat, come in and find a seat. And if you are in a seat, stand up and give yourself a little stretch. But don't leave. We're going to just reset for the keynote, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and someone is going to help me with this. Jessica's got a new, right.
Watch your step on the stage.